Okay, with this little video clip, I wanted to go over some of the basic ideas of working with layers. And a lot of times when you look at layers in Photoshop, a lot of people think it might be a little more complex. But the idea behind it is really simple. So when we start to go in and work with images, we can isolate different parts of our images onto these layers itself. Now, when we start working with this, they're kind of like these layers are going to be stacked on top of each other. And what we'll look at here in just a second, and I'll open up Photoshop and we'll start working with some images, we'll see how we can actually work with layers to manipulate and bring things together in Photoshop. When you start putting your image, parts of the image on a separate layer, what you're doing here is you can basically change what the design of the image is without affecting the other areas of your image. So when you place it onto a layer, you can paint on that layer, you can apply a filter onto that layer, and it's not going to affect the other parts of your image. And that's the beauty of working with layers. So as we're looking with this, here's a little um, just a little brief image here. It's a little blurry, but that's okay. You can figure out, get the gist of this. So what we do is we put these objects on a separate layer, and then we can move them around. We can apply different colors. We can go in and apply different adjustments, and it's only going to affect the layer that we're on that part. So again, let's take a look at Photoshop, and I am working with CC14, Creative Cloud 14. One of the things I like to do beforehand, just to let you know, is sometimes I'll restore our default settings. If you're new, as my students are, to Photoshop, this might be something you want to do. If you're on Windows, you want to hold down the Control, Alt, and Shift. As soon as you start with Photoshop, you want to hold those three keys down, and then a dialog box will come up, and you click Yes to confirm. This will change everything back to default settings. If you're on the Mac, it'll be Command Option Shift. I'm going in and working with that. So when I look at this, here I have Photoshop open for this, and again I have my toolbox over here on the left hand side. We'll use a couple of these tools over here on the left, but our main issue here would be working with our layers panel for this next part of our video. So if you don't see your layers panel, you can always find it under Window, Layers. So that's the other thing, all your panels are found up under the Window menu. You can also adjust your workspace, which is the way your Photoshop looks at, and you can go up to Window Workspace and you can change the default. Essentials is your default usually, so that way if you do go back to Essentials, you will see your layers panel and all that good stuff. Now what I'm going to do here, I'm going to go ahead and resize my layers panel to make it a little bit larger so that way we can actually see it, and work with this to make some other adjustments for that part. So in this regards, I'm going to start with this. I'm going to work with this image itself that I have from the Universal Studios in Florida. And what I want to do is take a look at our layers panel and go in and see what else can we do with this. When we work with original images and we bring it into Photoshop, it's going to be set up and have what we call as a background layer. In theory, the background layer is not a layer. It's at the bottom, and you can see that right here on my layers panel the lock is there. It means you can't really do too much to this. You can apply color, you can go and change certain things, but when you want to act and when you see the benefit of the layers, then what will happen here, the background is a little more restrictive on that aspect. So on our layers, anytime you work with an image, you take with a camera and you bring it in, you're always going to have a background layer. Now it could be a blank layer that you have there, or it could be a separate image, like in this case the background of this. Now what I'm going to do here too, I'm going to go up here, there's a little arrow pointing down, and what you can do is you can go to your different properties. You can have different commands. A lot of these commands are found in the layer menu as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down to panel options. I'm going to increase my thumbnail size so that way you can see it on the video. You don't have to do this on your own, but you can see the thumbnail changes a little bit larger, so it's a little bit easier to see. Again, nothing major on that part. Now when we look at our layers panel in more detail, notice how certain things are grayed out right now. That's because that you can't apply opacity to a background. You cannot change blending mode to your background layer. So it's locked. Once we have layers, we can we can actually change the opacity. We can make it transparent. We can go in and move things around and lock it in place if we want to. Now, down at the very bottom, there's certain things you can apply. There's one thing like the FX stands for layer styles. You cannot apply it because you're not really at a background style layer. You can also go in and work with these other commands like adjustment tools that will apply adjustment to the layer that you have active. So that will be able to apply to the background, but not half the other items that we have there. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to bring another image in eventually that we're going to put over here in the sky area. But I want to show you here in the background, if you're going to modify the layer that you're on, you have to have it selected. So keep this in the back of your mind. So when we start moving things over, you'll notice that you have layers on stack of each other. The key thing here is you're going to have to make sure that you have it selected. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to simply, I loosely selected this dragon, and so it's not as precise or clean that I usually like for a selection, but I'm just going to use it so I can quickly have it. And what I'm going to do is, one way to move it over to the other image is to select the object that you want first, and then do a simple edit copy. Are there other ways to move it around? Yeah, but I'm just going to go up to edit copy, and then I'm going to come over to my image and I'm going to do an edit paste, or you can do shortcut keys as well. Now what this does is it brings over only what was selected. So in this case, notice that only the dragon was selected, so it only goes in and copies that. Now if you want to bring this whole entire image over, then just do a select all, do an edit copy, and then do an edit paste. Now you can also move by drag and dropping it to other images as well. So that's also depends on what you want to try to do with that. But in this case, simply is edit and edit, copy and paste will work. Now I'm going to switch to my move tool over here in the top left hand corner. Notice I can move this around, and when I move this around, see how I can see the background around this. So I'm going to move it up here to the right. Now look over here to my layers panel. Notice how automatically it went in and created a new layer. So whenever you copy and paste something in, it's going to put it on as a new layer, and it's going to name it as layer 1. You want to get in the habit of renaming your layers as you go. And the easiest way to do this is to double click on the layer's name right here. So I'm going to bring my mouse right on layer 1. I'm going to double click. I'm going to give it a new name. I press my enter key to accept as I'm working with this. So here all I'm doing is I'm renaming the layers as I bring it over, because when you do copy and paste it over, you might have like 20-30 layers, and they'll all be named layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, layer 4. Now once you have it named, you can still move it. You can rotate it. I can go up to edit, free transform. I can rotate it around a little bit. I'll press my enter key to accept. Now here's the thing with the layers. You got to know what layer you're on, and notice how it goes in and highlights this in blue. Sometimes you can change that color as well. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the background layer. Notice how that's highlighted. Click on the dragon layer, it's highlighted and selected. Now what I want to do is I'm going to manipulate something in the background first. So what I want to do here is, over here on the left hand side there's an eyeball, and you can actually click on the eyeball for the dragon, and that's going to hide it. Now notice I didn't click on the dragon layer, I just clicked on the eyeball. Now if you went in and you clicked on the dragon layer first, then you need to go back and click on the background layer. So what I'm doing is I'm hiding these other layers, so that way I can concentrate on editing this image. Now what I want to do here, you see these little visitors down here, they're viewing this castle down at Universal. So what I want to do is I'm going to simply select this area, and it could be a loose selection here, it doesn't have to be very detailed. I'm going to go up to edit, fill, And Photoshop has a nice little option called Content Aware. It's going to take a look at all the pixels around it, and it's going to fill it in, so basically it's going to hide that person. When I click OK, voila, it went in and added the elements around it. So let's do the same thing here. Again, don't have to be precise on this part. I'm going to go up to Edit, Fill, Content Aware. Okay, and it does a great job on filling in that background. I'm going to go up to Select, Deselect, and this is only affecting the background layer. So as you're working with this, you have to make sure you understand that you are working on that layer. So make sure you're aware what layer you're on. Now I'm going to click on the dragon layer. Notice it doesn't show yet, so I have to come over and click on the eyeball. Now, let's bring another image over. I'm going to put it down here in the bottom left. So what I'm going to do here, I've had the Universal Studios logo selected here. Again, I'm just doing something really quick. I'm going to go up to Edit, Copy. I'm going to come over to the image. I'm going to do Edit, Paste. I'm going to bring it in. I'm going to put it down here in the bottom left. Now, notice how it comes up as layer 1. So I'm going to double click on layer 1. I'm just going to give it a new name, logo. Now again, notice the stacking order that we have here. So here, what I'm going to do is let's take our move tool, and I'm going to move this over on top of the dragon. Let's hide its head. So whatever's on the topmost layer is going to be hiding everything below it. Now I can move these layers, the stacking order, by holding down my mouse on the layer and dragging downward or upward. So now when I do this, notice that I moved the logo below the dragon, so it's going to be behind it. It's like sending it behind, sending it forward. Now I cannot drag it below the background. So look here, there's a little circle with a little slash through it. That means you cannot do so. The background's always going to be at the bottommost layer. Now you can make the background into a layer, and then you can move it below the logo below it if you wanted to. So to change the stacking order, all we're doing is we're dragging up, dragging down the layer itself within the layers panel. Now you can still move it around. So maybe you want to go in and see what it looks like in different locations. We can apply color to this. We can go in and make some adjustments. Now, as you're starting to work with this, again, remember which layer you're on. So if I need to modify the dragon layer, and I'm going to just take my eraser tool, and what I'm going to do, I'm just going to erase part of this, just like that. See how I went across? It's affecting that dragon layer. Now I'm going to undo, and you can do Edit, Undo. I'm going to click on the logo layer. I'm going to go straight across the dragon again with my eraser tool. It's not working. Why? Because there's nothing there. Whenever you work with layers, it's all transparent unless where you have your pixels. And our pixels happen to be where this image is. So it's only going to affect this area right over here in the Universal Studios Florida logo. So that's the other aspect. What most people do, they start modifying their image, and they think they're on the right layer, and nothing's happening. That's because they're on the wrong layer. So that's always important to look at that aspect of that. So we've seen how we can move things around. We've seen how we can add images to the composite that we want. So let's just take a look at some other things that we can do that's on our layers panel. One of the things we can do is change the opacity. The opacity makes the image a little more transparent. So I'm going to click on the dragon layer real quick, and I'm going to change the opacity down to 20%. You can see it's just like you can see part of the trees coming through, you can see the sky coming through. So if you increase the opacity up, it's just slightly transparent. So you can adjust that accordingly. So you can type in the value, or you can click and drag that slider back and forth. The other aspect of this is we also have what we call our blending modes. Blending modes is where this normal option is. Now, what do we use blending modes for? There's a variety of different reasons. Some for just add special effects, but we tend to use blending modes to help us to go in and bring out more contrast, bring out more color. So what I want to do is I want to bring out more of the contrast of the dragon. Okay, so what I'm going to do first is I'm going to duplicate that layer. How do I duplicate the layer? Easiest one I remember, is a shortcut key here. I'm going to hold down my Control key and press the letter J. Control J. On the Mac, it would be Command J. Command J. Notice how it creates a new layer called Drag and Copy. Now, if you don't do it that way, you can always go up to, you can go use your edit menu as well. Now, if you want to rename that, you can rename it. I'm going to leave it drag and copy so I know it's at the top. Now, to bring out some of the contrast, there's a couple different things we like to use. We usually typically use multiply, screen, and overlay. Overlay does a good job of bringing contrast. Notice how it brings out a lot of the dark edges and so forth. So what you're doing here, the trick is a lot of times if you want to bring out the contrast of one part of the image, you'll duplicate it, and that top layer you'll change its blending mode. Now this might be too much, so how do I lessen that effect? I just go to opacity and reduce it down. So I'm going to take it down to 47. Now look, here's the beauty of this. I'm going to click on the eyeball for this top layer. Notice the difference in contrast. Okay. Now the key is that the bottom dragon layer has not been manipulated. You're just using that drag and copy, and you're applying a blending mode to blend with it. So one of the things you might want to look at is basically blending modes and how it's used for retouching. It does a great job, and you'll see some different techniques out there on the websites, variety of websites. So if I want to do that for the logo, I'll duplicate the logo, Control J, Command J on the Mac, and I'll choose overlay. See how I brought a lot of the color? Might be a little bit too much, but sometimes, again, if that is, then you can readjust it. Now, when you have like duplicate layers like this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this bottom one. I'm going to hold down the Shift key, and I'm going to click on this second one. See how it selects both of this? Because you want both to go with each other, I'm going to link it. How do I link it? I'm just going to come down here to the bottom. I'm going to click on the link button. See how it puts a link in? Then click on my move tool. I can move both at the same time. Now, if I click on the logo copy, notice it only selects the logo copy. I move it. Notice there's a difference. You're not moving the logo as well because it's not linked. So here, all we're doing is showing you how to link things. And if you want to unlink things, just select it, click on the link button down here at the bottom, and it will unlink it. So select the multiple layers you want, and you can link the layers together if you want. It's like grouping it. So if you think about grouping. Let's just add some text here real quick. Let me move this over to the right a little bit more. I'm going to click on the topmost layer. Now, wherever active layer that you click on, if you add a new layer, it's going to put it right above it. So I'm going to come over to my type tool. I'm going to go and click, and I'm just going to type in universal. Now it's very small because my image is really large. So I'm going to select all there, and I'm going to change the font size up, see if I can see it a little bit larger. Here on my options bar, I'm just changing this property, so I'm going to go up to 200. Now here it's still a little bit small, so that's fine. What I'm going to do here, I'm going to go back in. I'm going to make it a little bit bold. And then I'm going to go up to Edit, Free Transform. And Free Transform, instead of me trying to figure out what size it is, I'm just going to resize it. just like that. Because once you press the free transform, you can resize down and then just press return key or enter key to accept that transformation. Now, with this, what I'm doing here is notice my type layer. You see the letter T. This T means it's a type layer. Now remember, can I move this in different places? Yeah. I can move it down below. Now it won't notice anything different unless you move this over and see how it's behind the dragon. So you can move type layers just like your other layers if you wanted to. Now what I want to do here is I'm going to come down to one of the very useful tools is to work with the FX button, which is layer styles. Again, you can only apply it to a layer. So you have a variety of different options you can choose. So if you wanted to go in and let's say create a drop shadow, this will open up a dialog box and you can control the settings. You can see a little shadow going on here. Now what's happening, of course, is black is with the black text. So let's just do red here so you can see the red. So you can see how the red is coming in. Now there's a variety of different things you can apply. So we can actually go in and we can click on Bevel and Emboss, make some other adjustments. And when I do this, it applies the layer style to that layer, and really what it's doing is it's non-destructive. We love non-destructive ways because I can always get back to the original text very quickly. The effects are added as almost like a separate layer inside the layer itself. So notice how the effects are added. If I want to modify something, I can double click on it. I can go in, let's do a color overlay real quick. Now I'm going to click on that. Let's change the color real quick. Let's do blue. So you can see that's applying to it. Now again, it adds it right here. So if you want to modify it, you double click on it. If you want to go in and delete it, you can delete it if you want to, or you can hide it from showing. There's these little eyeballs here that you can hide. So the other benefit of this too is if you go up to Window and you open up your Styles panel, you have a variety of different styles that you can apply to not just text but to images. So keep that in mind. I can click on it and it applies that style to the text I'm working with. There's a whole list of different styles you can click on. This drop down list right up here, and there's a whole list of styles you can actually open up and look at and apply. And when you do so, it applies the effects to that layer. So like here, if I go in and I work with like a logo layer, what I'm going to do here, let's actually work with logo. I'm going to hide the logo copy right now. I'm going to come down to the FX. I'm just going to click on, let's just do stroke real quick. And I'm going to increase the size. So notice how the black is going all the way around. I can change the fill color. Or not the stroke color, I'm sorry, the stroke color. Click OK. And again, it's going to be applied to that image. This is not text down here, this is the actual image. So it puts it around the actual pixels itself. Now, you can start experimenting with certain things, and so a lot of times people will just create, will work with simple text. Here's a little, and if I open up my style panel, if you want to look at different things, there's a text effects. I'm going to click on that. It's going to ask me to OK or append. I'm going to append. Append adds it. There's a whole list of different styles that you can apply. So applying layer styles is really fun, and because it does help enhance your text and helps enhance the images you're working with. Now, when you do apply a layer style, there's a difference between opacity and fill. Opacity and fill. Opacity takes anything on a layer and makes it transparent. Fill only affects the fill option on your layer itself. It will actually leave the layer styles behind. Now, since it's already changing the gradient there, you're not going to see a difference here with the style. So let me go down here to the logo real quick. So I'm going to change the fill here on the logo to 0. What's left? Just the stroke. Now, a lot of people say, well, can I change the opacity and fill? Well, in theory you could. The opacity will affect the layer style, but usually we just use one or the other on that. And a lot of times we use fill to create a special effect. So like up here, if I hide the gradient overlay from my universal text style, I'm going to change the fill real quick to 0. Notice it creates the outline. So if I move this down, see how the text, you can see right through it. So it basically said, hey, anywhere there's a fill, 0%, but if there's a layer style, keep it at 100%. You're going to find that when you start working with text, a lot of times you want to add a drop shadow, or you're going to add a stroke, and it's going to make the text easier to read, especially for larger headings in Photoshop. Now, as we're working with this, keep this back in mind as well. One of the things as you start working with this, you're going to get multiple layers together, and that can increase your file size. So there's a couple things you can do. Now, originally, we want to keep your originals in a PSD format. When you keep them originals in the PSD format, it allows you to maintain all the layers. So what I'm going to do here real quick, I'm going to do a file save as, and I'm going to give it a new name, and it's going to save it in a PSD format for me. And all my layers are going to be right here, and still I can go in, I can select it, I can move it around and so forth. Now we can also go in, we can save something as a JPEG. So I'm going to go here and save it for the web. I'm going to change to the JPEG version. I'm going to click on save. Now this is going to go in and create a JPEG version of this. Now you're still working on the PSD. So whenever I do a save for web, the JPEG version's been stored. So let me open this up real quick. JPEG version's here. When I open the JPEG version, notice the layers have been flattened. So when you save as a JPEG format cannot hold layers. So it's going to flatten your image, and when it flattens it, if I want to move universal around, I want to move that dragon around, I can't, because it's not on a layer. So that's why we always save our original as a PSD, so we can work with the multiple layers. Now there are times where if you're done with a certain part of the image, you don't need it anymore. Well, you don't need to keep the layers. You can merge the layers together. Like for example, notice I have dragon copy selected. I can go up to layer, merge down, and that merges the two dragon layers together. Then I can also go in, I can use the layer menu and use a variety of different things. I can flatten my image, I can merge it, all the layers are visible, so I can merge it. Now just remember, when you merge something, it's harder to get back to the original on the multiple layers unless you have the original saved that way. So just be careful when you're doing it. It's okay to do it, but just know why when you're merging it, you're flattening those areas together. So definitely pay attention to that when you're saving. Always keep the original in a PSD format, and then also go in and when you're sending something to a client, you're sending something, usually we send as a JPEG. Just remember the JPEG version is going to flatten your image. It's going to flatten your image. So again, that's the last aspect of that, and there's more things you can work with layers. We have up here in our CC, we can lock things. I have a couple other videos that we talk about when we create layer mask, and we're working with adjustment layers. So that's something you can do as well. But basic layers, we're just taking a look at and seeing how we can move things up and down. The other aspect too is also look at the layer menu. There's a variety of things you can use up here as well that's almost similar to what's on your layers panel. So If you have any questions, let me know and we'll go from there.